You got it. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And I'm going to give the floor to Rachel Coyle.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us. I am excited to have everyone here. We're going to talk through very quickly today how to submit testimony or present testimony at the State House, because there's a lot of bills moving that we really need to be lifting our voices on. So I'm going to share my screen really fast. I'm going to talk casually, but it helps to have visuals. And I will send everything I talk about today to Debbie afterwards so she can send it out to you. So every website I mention, the slideshow I show you, everything you'll get afterwards. But I'm just going to share my screen really quickly here. All right. You should be able to see it, but shout out if you cannot. All right. So very, very quick here. The Ohio Statehouse works very similar to how federal government works, where there's a House and a Senate before a bill goes to the governor for his signature. That means that you might get to come in and testify for a bill twice, once in the House and once in the Senate. And the bill can go in either direction. It can start in the Senate or the House most of the time. So that is helpful because a lot of times you'll see in the news like Senate passes bill and it makes it sound like the whole process is over when actually you still have a whole nother step in the process to do something about the bill. So once a bill is introduced at the State House, it gets assigned to a committee. And this is really important because most of the bill changes happen in the committees. And you can see there that all the committees are laid out. This is a website I'll send to you. And every committee is basically a few members of the legislature who are focused on a certain issue. So if you're really passionate about education, for example, you can sign up for the education committee and they will be hearing bills on the topic that interests you. And the legislators on that committee tend to be the ones who are most focused on that issue as well. So that is just helpful information that we will get back to here in a second. But should also tell you that once a bill is assigned to that committee, it's supposed to start receiving hearings. This is where the testimony happens. So this is not always the process. They like to throw things off for us, but this is usually how it goes. So usually a bill will get its first hearing where we don't get to testify, just the person who introduced the bill gets to testify. And then the testimony starts happening where the public can come in. So proponents are supporters of the bill. Then they'll have a hearing for people who don't like the bill or people who have concerns about it, interested party. But that isn't always the pattern. That just tends to be how they usually follow. But the most important thing to know is that you can't just be sending in testimony anytime you want. You have to wait until they announce a hearing for your bill, and they have to announce that they're accepting your type of testimony. So they have to say if you don't support the bill, they have to say we're having an opponent testimony hearing for this bill on this day at this time. And that is why the most important thing that we can do as people who want to testify is actually getting the notices that come out that tell us when these bills are having hearings, when the testimony will be accepted. This is the single most important thing that we can do in the whole testimony process, is being aware of when the testimonies are happening. So I'm actually going to walk you through the process of how to get signed up for these, and then I'll send it to you afterwards as well. So when the committees are going to be meeting, they will put out what's called a committee notice, where they will announce when they're going to be meeting and where and what type of testimony they'll be accepting on which bills. And we can contact the committee chairs, the people who lead the committee, and ask to be placed on those notice lists. It's just an email that tells you all that information. It's an email that gives you that committee notice. So I'm going to walk you through very quickly how to sign up for those, but then I'll send it to you afterwards as well. So this is legislature.ohio.gov, which we'll send to you, but there's all the committees are laid out there. You can click on that committees tab. I'm going to click on the Senate committees first, and it's great. They're all laid out in alphabetical order. I highly recommend going through and just picking out all the ones that interest you on your interest area. But I'm going to click on the Higher Education Committee tab because that's one of the areas that I'm really passionate about. Click on Higher Education here. And then you can see these are the legislators who are on the Higher Education Committee. These are the people who listen to bills about that issue. the chair of the committee is always going to be listed first. They are the most powerful person on the committee. They decide which bills move and which bills don't, which bills get hearings and which don't. They're the ones who make up the rules of the committee. They're also the person you're going to send your testimony to when you're testifying. And in the Senate, they're the person you're going to contact to get on that committee notice email list. So I'm actually going to click on Senator Christina Rogner here. You can go to her page and you see there on the left is her contact information. So just contact her office, email or phone, and say, I want to be placed on the Senate higher ed notice list. And then they'll take your email and you will start getting those notices anytime higher ed committee is going to meet. You'll know what bills are moving. You'll know when testimony is accepted. The House has made it a lot easier for us for some reason. So we're going to walk through the House process quickly, but it's much faster because they've got things more in hand. So it's the same website, legislature.ohio.gov, House committees. They're all laid out there. Definitely recommend going through and picking the ones that interest you. I'm going to click on their higher education committee too. But oh, look, they have a fancy button. So it's very nice and easy. You can just go in and sign up for all the House committee notices without having to contact the offices. You can just click that mailing list button, and then you'll find out anytime those hearings are happening, anytime testimony is accepted. So once you get that notice that a bill is going to be heard, that testimony is going to be accepted, you can come in and testify for or against that bill. The goal is to testify in person because it's where the TV cameras are. The press will be there. There's also a lot of power in getting that visual of a ton of people physically at the State House. So it's really important to get there in person if you can. But we tend to make it hard. We tend to have things at like 10 o'clock in the morning on Wednesdays, and I can't tell you when the hearing is going to end. I can only tell you when it starts. So you have to be able to give up a solid chunk of your day. If you can't testify in person, you can also testify written only instead. Whoop, I think someone is muted. Can someone mute?
I'm not sure who that is. Let's see. We need to mute everybody.
All right. So yeah. So when you are testifying, you can testify in person or written only, which is very, very important. It's still very valuable. It's still an official part of the process, still on the record. The legislators will still have it in front of them on their iPads in committee. But I can't promise you they'll read it, which is the only problem. So you do want to testify in person if you can, but if you can't, written only is still very valuable. And the great thing is that testifying is incredibly easy. So the entire process is actually laid out on this one slide. So when you get that notice that they're accepting testimony for your bill, you write your testimony. You email your testimony to the chair, that all-powerful committee chair, 24 hours before the hearing. And you send them a witness slip, which is just a very basic piece of information about yourself. I have one here that I'll show you in a second, but it is incredibly simple. You write your testimony and you fill out your witness slip and you email them both to the committee chair 24 hours before the hearing. That is the whole process. If you're testifying written only, you did it. You are part of the official record. And I'll show you here the witness slip. I will send you a blank one. Most committees will accept this blank witness slip. But if a committee has their own fancy witness slip that they want you to use, they will send that to you as well. But it's very simple. You just tell them, like, if you're a lobbyist or if you're representing an organization or yourself, that kind of thing. But that's the whole process. And then the best thing about all of this is that you don't have to feel like you are writing a term paper. You can feel like you are just getting your thoughts out in just a few paragraphs or even a few sentences, and that is perfectly acceptable. The testimony can be short and sweet and to the point, but the fact that you took the time to participate in the process is really what makes the difference. Although I will note from our friends at Urge that if you want to send in a lot of like detailed data and citations and statistics, that can also be valuable because it can be used potentially in a future lawsuit against the bill, for example. Like if you want to make arguments that this is against the law or unconstitutional and use a lot of detailed source citation, that could potentially be helpful for future lawsuit. So really whatever you want to testify about, if you want to be like bold and specific and detailed and data oriented, that is great. But also, if you want to just be short and sweet and tell a personal story or, an emotional tale about how it would impact someone in your family if this bill passed, either one of those is absolutely fine. You don't have to be connected to the bill personally. It can just be an understanding you have of how the bill would impact Ohio. Anything counts. This is another thing I'll send you. This is a testimony template. So this is just so that you can feel comfortable that your testimony is being laid out exactly the way the pros, the lobbyists are doing it. You can just lay out with the introductions, the explaining who you are, give the meat of your testimony, and then ask them to vote a certain way and open yourself up to questions. So this is the exact format the lobbyists are using, and you can feel confident using that testimony template as well. And then after you finish testifying, this is obviously if you're there in person, the committee members do have the chance to ask you questions. After each question, you want to try to start your response with this formal through the chair to the representative if you're in the House, or to the senator if you're in the Senate. If you forget, it's fine. You're not going to get kicked out or anything. That's just how the lobbyists are going to be doing it. And if the chair wants to be a jerk, they'll remind you, but it's totally fine if you forget. So that's just a way of it's the rules of order essentially. But basically, the legislators can ask you questions if they want. And if you get a good back and forth with a legislator, a lot of times the press really loves that, and you can end up getting a lot more coverage for your issue. One thing to note is that sometimes the legislators, it is very frustrating. They will not all show up, or they will be rude and being distracted during testimony, like they'll be on their phones. And that can be incredibly disheartening. It can feel like, why did I show up here today if they're not even going to listen to me? But actually, I want you to pay close attention to this photo. The reason you are there is that camera over there in the corner. The press is in that room. There is TV coverage of your hearing, your testimony, and the crowd is there with the visual of you being there as well. And that is what we're doing. We are trying to get the message out to the public about the importance or the danger of this bill. So even if you get a hearing where the witnesses are speaking to a like
He needs to
mute there.
yeah.
Even if even if you end up with this room, it's still incredibly powerful and important to be there testifying in person if you can, because of those cameras, because of the TV, because of the visual. And one other thing is that we have really been seeing in the last couple of years increased rules in committee where they're trying to make it harder for us to testify. Sometimes because of how important it is to testify. Sometimes they will do things like make it so that only a few people can testify for and against a bill, which sounds fair until you realize that sometimes there's a bill that has 5 supporters and thousands of opponents. It creates a false sense of equality to only let a few people testify. So what we have started to have to do is we have to be loud and obnoxious and protest, essentially. We have to make it clear that it is more difficult to try to prevent us from participating in the process than to just let us speak. So this is a real example from a couple years ago. This bill would increase the penalties for protesting at fracking and drilling sites like pipelines. These folks showed up to testify against the bill, and they were told that only a few people would be allowed to testify that day. And instead of just dealing with that and going home, they started protesting in the halls of the State House. And the press heard that ruckus, and they came running, and they took all these photos and they interviewed all the witnesses. And we actually ended up with a ton more articles about the bill that would not have been written if they had just let these folks testify. So we have to be loud. We have to make it clear that they need to let us participate in the process, or we're going to be more of a problem, essentially. And another resource that we have available to us is the fact, like I mentioned, the TV cameras. The Ohio channel is always covering these committees when you're testifying. And there is a way to watch all of the testimonies live online, and they're recorded so you can watch them later as well. This is on ohiochannel.org. It's completely free. A lot of our basic like TV stations will have it on as well. But this is great if you want to go and watch your own testimony or your friend's testimony and share those online. I'll even send you a thing where you can go in and pull video clips of yourself. Makes great social media content to, again, help spread the word about your bill. And then one other thing real fast here is I want to show you how to find other testimonies. If you're looking for examples for writing your own testimony, or if you're looking for ideas for reasons to support or oppose a bill. So this is that same website, legislature.ohio.gov, which I'll share with you. But they have this legislation tab, and there's a search tool here. And then what you do is you just type in your bill number. So I'm going to type in Senate Bill 1 because that one is really on my mind right now. And you'll see it comes up there at the bottom. And then you click on Senate Bill 1. And this is the bill page here. And if you click on committee activity, any testimony that has already been submitted or presented on this bill will show up. So I'm going to click on committee activity, and you can see all the people there who have supported the bill. And then below there, it's funny actually, this bill in particular has 13, exactly 13 proponents or supporters, and it had 1,000 opponents. And all of those 1,013 individuals' testimonies are listed here in this committees tab. So if you were to scroll down, you could see thousands and thousands of testimonies. You could download the ones that are from organizations that interest you and read through their opinions, get some really good messaging on the bill for the next time it gets a hearing. So I believe that is all I had for you today. Yes, so I'm going to stop sharing and turn it back over to Deb.
Thank you very much, Rachel. That was really a quickie view, but very comprehensive, and we really appreciate it. We're going to go to Janine now. Before we do that, Rachel, could you just tell us a little bit about your involvement, or how you got to where you are?
Sure. Yeah, I just dove right in, didn't I? Yes. So my name is Rachel Coyle. I do a lot of things, but I run a training program called How Things Work at the Statehouse, where I teach people literally just how to advocate at the state level, how loud and important their voices are at the state level. I can put all the different social media accounts for and the email sign up for that into the chat if you're interested. The goal is to get people to participate in state government, because we all know that Congress is in the news all the time, and the world is on fire in Washington D.C., but there's so much we can do at the state level. And then for my paying job, I'm the programs director at a new group called Ohioans Against Extremism, and then I am the policy director at Honesty for Ohio Education, and I can send all of you those as well. It's really just, I am passionate about getting people to care about the State House in all the different ways possible.
Thank you. And I think some of you may have seen the videos of Rachel when the students were protesting about SB 1 at the State House. It was very poignant, really. They were very passionate about it. It was a really sad day, but as she mentioned, it is not over quite yet. We still have to go through the House, so there's still things to do, and we're still on. So I really appreciate that, Rachel. Thank you so much for all you do. And now it's going to be Janine's turn. Janine Migden Ostrander is the actually, the Consumers Council. So many of you may have been in touch with her or know about her from that work. And I'm going to let her introduce herself and then tell us a little bit about lobbying, which she's very familiar with. Thank you. Take it away, Janine.
Okay, thank you. Tough act to follow with Rachel. Rachel did such an excellent job in presenting. Debbie attached to the email the tips for meetings for legislators. So as opposed to doing a PowerPoint, I did a 1.5 pages that you could keep and look at before you have meetings. And I'm basically going to be walking through that in my presentation. My background is that I have been working in energy issues, representing consumer and environmental organizations for over 40 years. And in that capacity, covering over 18 states, I've had a lot of experience lobbying legislators and also testifying before the legislature. And certainly as the Ohio Consumers Council, I did a ton of that. So most of my work has been in Ohio as well as other states. So meetings with legislators can be very, very important because it's an opportunity for you to have a one-on-one exchange where you can have more frank conversations because it's not being filmed, it's not in front of a large audience. Sometimes when you're dealing with legislators who are, supportive of your position, you can get, talk a little bit more about strategy, get some frank insights that you might not otherwise get. If you're talking with adversaries, it's an opportunity as opposed to them just listening to you testify, hearing from them, what are they thinking? Because those are the arguments that you're going to have to be ready to answer to try to sway them to go another direction. So these meetings can be very, very valuable. So when you have the meeting, some of these things may be very obvious to you, but introduce yourself and shake hands and make eye contact, get them paying attention to you from the beginning. Thank them for giving you the opportunity to meet with them because they really don't have to. And you might think they should, that's their job, but no, they don't have to. So thank them for that and always, be very polite. Now, one of the things is you may not get to meet with the legislator. Sometimes they may be called off on something else, and at the last minute, you've got an aide. It doesn't hurt at the beginning of the meeting to say, how much time do we have? You may be booked in for 30 minutes, but you may only get 10. So that helps you to calibrate how you're going to give your message and what you're going to say. And, if you get to meet with an aide instead of a legislator, sometimes that's not a bad thing. I mean, I can't tell you how many meetings I was in with legislators talking to them about a bill, and sometimes even the bill sponsor, believe it or not. And I would say, well, this particular piece in your bill is really dangerous for consumers, for example, when I was the Consumers Council. And they would say, is that really in our bill? And they'd call the aide in and said, repeat what you just said. And I would repeat it. And they say, yeah, that's in the bill. So, the aides sometimes know more than the legislator themselves. And so then the aide, if you can get to the aide, then the aide can talk to the legislator if and say, okay, yeah, we really need to fix this piece. So understand how much time you have. Legislators usually, and this is a sad truth, if you're an entity that donates to them, they'll find more time for you than if you're an entity that does not. It's just the way it works, unfortunately. If you live in the district of the legislator, make sure you let them know that because that means you're a voter. And then if you can say, many of my neighbors agree with me and think this, then that's going to have more of an impact than if you're from another, than if you don't say it or you're from another district. But of course, if you're meeting with multiple legislators on multiple bills, chances are you're not meeting with the legislator in your district, especially if you're meeting with a sponsor or committee members. Always be polite. Sometimes they may say things that just make you so mad you want to scream. Sometimes they might be rude. If you yell, if you get into their face, you're never going to be invited back, and they're going to use that as an excuse like, oh, that person's crazy, so I'm right and they're wrong. You immediately lose. So as hard as it may be, it doesn't mean you don't make your points. You just say, well, I respectfully disagree with you, and here's why, and you present your factual argument or your reasoning for why what they are proposing doesn't make sense. Don't, getting into their face you lose it right there. You should always begin your discussion when you get in there after you've done the initial introductions. Tell them why you want to meet with them, what your position is. I'm here to talk to you in support of this legislation. I'm here to talk to you in my opposition to this legislation, or I'm here to talk to you about this legislation, which is mostly good, but needs some important tweaks and changes to make it more effective if there are certain pieces, because legislation can be very long, it can be very complex. There can be parts of it you like and parts of it you don't like. So you have to be prepared to talk about what it is that you want to see changed. And, especially if the bill's got legs and it's going to go. So when you begin your discussion, you basically say, I have 3 points. if you have a laundry list of 4 or 5 points, you're not going to get, number one, you may not have time to get to all your points. Number two, after 3 points, they're going to shut down on you. And so you really want to hone it into what are the 3 critical most points. And then you could have a couple of other points left so that if you cover those 3 points and they're giving you more time, you can say, oh, and by the way, there's this, a 4th thing that we're also concerned about is this, and a 5th thing is this. So prioritize what are the most important points you want to make and how do you make them. After you go through your 3 points and list them so they have a roadmap of where you're going and what you want to say, after that, you basically take the time to go into each section. Now, if they ask you questions, they may ask you questions on point number 1 so that you never get to point number 2, number 3. That's okay if you've already told them what those other 2 points are. And if they're showing an interest, that's also a good thing because that gives you an opportunity to delve deeper with them, to answer their questions. If you don't know the answer to the question, it's okay to say, gee, I really don't know the answer to this. Let me get back to you. And then you make sure you get back to them within 24 hours or as quickly as possible with an answer. And it's an opportunity for a follow-up. And you can also at that point get into discussion because if they ask you a question about, well, I understand this bill to do this, this, and this, and I think that's a good thing, and you don't, you can say, well, yes, I don't think it's a good thing, and here's the answer to your question, but why do you think it's a good thing? And engage in a little bit of a dialogue so you get information. So you're not just talking to them and giving them your points, you're also getting feedback and you're getting intel that you can take back to all of us so that we can use it for the next meetings, whoever's next up on having meetings. And it also gives you an opportunity to maybe have some back and forth, because if you understand why they feel a certain way about it, about a specific issue, and it's not just a question of following the party line because, I want to be reelected. If they have some legitimate concerns, which they will, it gives you an opportunity to rebut that and say, well, have you thought about this perspective or have you thought about that? That's the nice thing about these one-on-one meetings. And one thing you should consider is that if you think the bill is going to pass, and there's no chance that you can stop this bill from passing, there's a lot of high-powered lobbyists pushing it forward, then the next thing you want to do is sort of analyze the bill and say, okay, what can we change in this bill? What things can we maybe get in the bills? Because a lot of times legislation can be a negotiation, and it depends upon the position that you're in. When I was the Consumers Counsel and they would want me to support a bad piece of legislation, I could sometimes get some changes to it. Sometimes it would put me in the column of supporting it. Sometimes I would get the changes and say, I still can't support the bill, but you should make these changes. And some powerful Dems in the party, in the committee would make that happen. But it is an opportunity. It's not, when a bill is introduced, a lot happens in committee, as Rachel pointed out. There's a lot of amendments that are offered, a lot of changes are made. And so that's your opportunity to get in front of a legislator, maybe a couple of amendments or a couple of changes. So you might want to have in your back pocket, going into the meeting, if you think this bill is going to pass, what are some of the things that we can push that can make it a little bit more palatable? Maybe we still won't support it, but maybe it won't be as bad as it was originally going to be. And those are victories. As small as they are, those are victories. And so we should take them and try to do that. Always be very well prepared. Know your subject matter, know your points. Think about in advance, play devil's advocate with yourself. What do you think, if you were against your position, what kind of questions would you be asking? What kind of points would you be making to try to kill your arguments and be ready to respond to them? So think those things through so that you're totally prepared to give them your very best. Also, if there's time at the end and you sense that your legislator has not made up his or her mind on how they're going to vote, they're sort of saying, well, the things I like, things I don't like, probe them on it. Take that opportunity to probe them on and say, well, what is in the bill that you like? What is in it that you don't like, and why? and what is it that we could help you with to help, what can we tell you, or what are you interested in that might tilt your vote one direction or another, and try to have that conversation. If you're meeting with a legislator, there's the possibility that you won't have as much time as if you're meeting with an aide, unless you're a fairly large group or you have a number of constituents from that legislative district in your meeting. If you are not in central Ohio and you live up in Cleveland or Youngstown or anywhere like that, it's also advantageous to try to get meetings with your legislators in their district. And this is especially true on the federal side when you're dealing with Congress people, because they usually have more time, they're less pressed, they're not running to the next meeting, and they'll spend more time with you. If you're going into a meeting with a group of people, before you walk in the door, you should have gotten together and said, okay, who's going to take the lead? Who is the person who is going to kickstart it and, basically introduce us, or, have us go around and introduce ourselves? Who's going to, who's going to speak on each particular subtopic, so that if you have 3 points, you've got one person covering each of the points, and the others may be, principally covering it. If you've got 6 people in a meeting, you may have 2 people on each point, and you should agree ahead of time how much time each of you are going to spend, which of course you can't control if the legislator asks questions, which is a good thing. But that way you try to make sure that if it's the first point, the person doesn't go on and on and on, and we never get to point 2 and 3. So you want to very well manage that, maybe do a dry run beforehand through a Zoom call or something if you're a large group of people that are going to talk. And if you don't want to talk, because sometimes it's just good if you're not comfortable talking, if you're not, if that doesn't work for you, then you could still attend, but you don't have to be a designated speaker. Just your presence in the room says, hey, I care about this bill, especially if you're a constituent. So, if you're feeling kind of shy, and just want to chime in with a point here or there based upon something that's said, feel free to do that as well. So have a plan of action together. So at the conclusion of the meeting, you want to thank them for taking the time, and telling them that you hope they'll vote in such and such a way, and that, keep the lines of communication open. Provide them with contact information. I always like to leave a legislator a 1 or 2 page summary about the size of these tips. So something that they can read through pretty quickly. If you give them a lot of information, maybe their aide might read it, they may not. But if you have, you can also have like a 1.5 page document like this, or 2-page document like this, and then attach to it reference, like if there's some charts or data or other information that you would reference within your summary, and attach that they can have that as well, if you think that would be helpful to them in terms of getting additional information. Always make yourself available for follow-up, to be used as a reference, to provide further information on any of the points that they want. After your meeting, I always like to follow up with a short email back to the legislators saying, thank you very much for having, this meeting. I understand you're concerned about this or this, and that gives me like a day to like reflect on everything I heard. And if there was one point that they made and I think, okay, I responded to it, but I didn't think about this other point until later when I was mulling it over, you can put that in the email that you respond back to, or just to summarize once again your main points. But it's an opportunity for you to say, okay, was there anything in this meeting that was covered that I didn't quite nail and that I want to reinforce? Or some point that the legislator made where they said, gee, I'm really wondering about, how many states have passed legislation like this? If you can find information on that and respond back and say, only 2 states have passed it. 20 states have turned it down because it's such a bad bill. Of course, you wouldn't say it that way, but whatever the issue is or whatever the question is, it's a last opportunity for you to go back. Always CC the aide, because you don't know if the legislator is going to read it or see it with everything that they get in their inbox. And the aide is an opportunity to reinforce. And after your meeting, I would urge you to send a summary to Debbie to include with all of our information, because she is really our central, fabulous, incredible person putting together all the information and sharing it with everybody. And that would be useful. And also let us know if you get meetings set up. That's the other thing. Let Debbie know so that we can, follow through and see who's meeting with who's finding out what, and what are the main concerns, and how do we want to address them for the next meeting, maybe not with that same legislator, but with another legislator who we know holds similar views. So I guess that pretty much summarizes what I wanted to cover with everybody. I think I covered everything that I had on this. Yeah, but it's important to make sure you give them your contact information. And lastly, be ready. Yeah, I think I covered that. So I'm done.
That was fantastic. Thank you so much. I think we'll have time. Looks like we have good enough time. This is great. We'll have time for questions and answers, and we've got a lot of folks here. I'm going to try to catch all the people with hands raised or with a little emoji hand. If I miss somebody else flag me, please, and let me know that I'm missing somebody. So I think we'll go ahead and take questions. You can direct it to either Rachel or Janine, and then I will just have you talk to them directly. Okay, who has a hand up? I can't believe it. Okay, is there anybody that I'm missing here? Now there's so many people that make sure you've got your video on so I can see you if you're ready to ask a question. Okay, they covered things so well. It's okay, Colleen. Let me just unmute you. Oops, I guess I can't. You go ahead and unmute.
Yeah. Okay. So, thanks for the presentations. They were excellent.
Oh, we can't hear you too well.
Oh, thanks for the presentations. They were excellent. Can you hear me now?
It's still pretty low.
Come back to me.
I can't hear her at all.
Yeah. Okay, we'll come back to Colleen. Anybody else have a question or a comment? I would just like to say, just my own comment, that there's so much information that they've provided, but these guys are fantastic resources, and they are connected with Indivisible in many ways, by being members as well as people that we can call on. And it's just a wealth of resources. So I'm just delighted. Okay, we're getting Colleen come back in, and she's going to see if it will work better now.
Right again.
I don't know. Is it your sound turned all the way up?
I can hear a little. I could like
Yeah, so can I.
I could translate if that's helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
My question is, what are the rules about protesting at the State House? So I know I've been to a rally and that went into the atrium, and then I was at a rally in the, so what are the rules about having an organ?
Yeah, so her question was, what are the rules about protesting at the State House? She said she's protested or been at rallies in different places like the atrium and that kind of thing, but what are the rules? And that is a great question that the answer has changed recently. So we have reached a point now where we are being told that the rules are different than they actually are. So for example, Matt Huffman, the Speaker of the House, made an announcement that he was no longer going to allow people outside of the House chambers while they're voting because he is scared of us. And that is not actually a rule they have voted into the State House. What they're doing is they are increasing the police presence outside of the House chamber during voting. So it doesn't mean we can't show up to the State House. It just means we have to be maybe one room away. So we're going to have to be louder. And that is very much what we're seeing at a lot of places. We are seeing an increase in police presence where they try to physically intimidate you into leaving what is the public people's house. And so what I have been doing, and I will actually share this link in here while I'm talking, is sharing with folks the official rules of the building of the State House so that in the moment people can decide for themselves what the lines they're comfortable crossing. So if you, for example, disrupt a committee or a session, if you are loud or if you find a way to sneak in a sign into a session and then unfurl it, you will be removed from the State House. They will come and take you out. But I've never seen anyone arrested at the State House. You can come back the next day. They just kick you out the building and then you can come back in the next day. But based on people's different levels of comfort, there will be some people who aren't able to do that. So you have to, what I recommend is reading the rules and then deciding for yourself what you are comfortable doing. And it really is, it is the people's house. It is a public space. The rules are officially that if you're going to have a protest with more than 100 people at it, you have to get a permit. But it really is a lot of deciding for yourself what you're comfortable doing and if you're comfortable getting kicked out. I've been talking to a lot of the students recently who have been asking these same questions about like if they're going to get arrested. And I've been talking to a lot of lobbyists who we have never seen someone arrested at the State House in all of our years, but we are also in a time where things are escalating. We're in a world where they could suddenly decide to start arresting people at the State House. So I can never promise people that won't happen. It has to be, again, a decision you make based on your own comfort level. But what we do know is we're going to have to keep physically showing up more and more often because they don't want us to. And the press loves when people show up. It radically changes the narrative when we're there physically. All the photos and videos and articles are about us when we show up, even in very small numbers. So it is, I know that answer was long and not very detailed because the answer is it changes. Yeah, but I put the rules in the chat and I can email them out to you as well. And then just really going and knowing them and then knowing for yourself what you're comfortable with is my best answer there.
Thank you, Rachel. I will be providing anybody who leaves a link in the chat. I'm going to be providing that as a part of the next list that goes out, which will go out either Saturday or Sunday along with the recording. Hopefully, I would get the recording put on YouTube, and then it should be able to be shared. So you should be getting that information very soon. But thank you very much. That's very helpful. I wonder if, unless anybody else has a question at the moment, I just wonder if it would be interesting, to me at least, to hear from both Janine and Rachel about their most maybe interesting or harrowing or great experience that they've had in any of the advocacy that they've done. Does anything come to mind quickly? Maybe, I don't know.
Janine, you want to start? I feel like I've been taking up all the oxygen.
Oh, that's okay. I have quite a few of them actually.
Great.
Yeah, and most of them, when I was the Consumers Council, there was always a Republican, sorry, men, male legislator who was designated to get into my face. So I had that every single time I testified. Somebody would go after me, whether it was about my budget or it was about a utility issue. When it was a utility issue, it was a lot easier because I was the expert and I knew more than they did. So I could fight them off better. When it was the budget, it was a lot more dicey. But the thing is to never lose your temper and always stand your ground, state your points, and push back if you disagree. I mean, I had one legislator question, I had a legal intern who he said was being paid more than his legislative aide. And he got, he's saying, why are you paying so much? Well, it was what I don't set the state salary levels. It was what it was. but I pushed back on him and I said, this is a very highly valued employee. This person does great work, and maybe you should pay your legislative aid more. So, and the legislative aide was in the background kind of laughing, like, yes, but, behind the back of his legislator. But, be ready, be ready to respectfully respond and don't take crap. And then just a lot of issues with legislators sitting there with their computers and the utility lobbyists are feeding them questions, hostile questions to ask me. And in those circumstances, and I think I told Pierre the story the other day, one time, sometimes what I would do with the legislator is say to them, could you rephrase that question? I didn't quite get what you're asking. And of course they can't, because they're reading from the lobbyist and they don't know what the heck they're asking. Or, and so that puts them on the spot and gets them all flustered. Or I would say to them, I'm not sure I fully get what you're asking me. Are you asking me X, Y, and Z? And I would change it to what I wanted to answer. And they'd say, yeah, that's what I'm asking you. And I'd get into the record what I wanted to get into the record. So that's what I'm saying. Like, when it's something where you know more than the legislator does, you can do that kind of thing. On other topics, that doesn't always work. So
That's
those are
fantastic.
just a couple of stories.
That must feel like such vindication.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, it was. And I've had legislators afterwards, after they went after me, and I'd meet with them in their offices privately on the issues, actually say, you want to talk to me after the way I acted? I've had them say that to me, and I've said, well, you're voting on this thing, and, yes, I would like to talk with you. And, this is not personal. This, and we would proceed.
That's awesome. Rachel, do you have any stories? You might have some real recent ones, because we certainly saw you in the news a lot.
Yeah, so we're in the process of fighting this bill, Senate Bill 1, that we call the Higher Education Destruction Act. And this bill actually is a new version of a bill that we killed the first time around. And a lot of people don't understand, I think, how much of state politics is psychology. And a lot of times our strategy in this environment where the Republican majority controls absolutely everything, our strategy is to kill a bill hearing once a week for 2 years until the bill dies and they have to start over, which sounds impossible, but we did it with this last bill, Senate Bill 83, where week after week we would put up such pressure, such a fuss about this bill that they would cancel the bill hearing, hoping that we would go away, hoping they could wait us out, essentially, because they don't want to deal with protests. And at the end of the 2 years, when the bill died, like after 2 years, the bill will go away. And it was wonderful. There was actually a moment where the bill sponsor, who truly did, he and I do not see eye to eye on literally anything, but he had to give this press conference that I will put in the chat, where he basically was like, we're just going to have to wait for a more favorable environment to pass this bill, which is just unbelievable in a world where he is part of what is a super majority in both chambers. There is absolutely no more favorable environment. If you can't get your bill passed, it's a bad bill that no one likes. And it was just like a sad little press conference where he was admitting that no one wanted his bill. And so now we're dealing with that bill again, but we know we've beaten it before, and that just gives me like such motivation to keep going.
Well, I have a question about there was Brenner just introduced a bill, I think SB 113, to oppose all DEI. So it seems like they're trying to go at it from, if they can't manage to get SB 1 through, that they're going to go through it that way. Is that your sense of it?
Yes, my fear is they're going to try and do both of them. It really is. We are in a situation now where these politicians are openly introducing bills that would ban diversity. And I think that is just it's a new place for us to be in. So yeah, we now see this bill that is the Higher Ed Act, but only at the K-12 level, banning all diversity and inclusion programs at the K-12 level. And they're either going to try and go that route instead of higher ed, or they're going to try and do both, but we will be there either way.
Well, one thing I think about the diversity, equity, and inclusion is that we should be using those words and not DEI, because a lot of people oppose DEI and they don't know what it means. And when you break it down and use those three words, which is something I worked a lot with in the energy issue and trying to bring equity to low-income communities and marginalized communities on energy. Think about siting of power plants and other things and other programs. You know, people think about it differently when you use the actual words.
Mm-hmm.
And I also don't understand why we're not calling them out more for being racist. That's my own
Yeah.
personal opinion.
Make them say publicly that they oppose diversity. Even if you don't change the legislator's mind, the people who are hearing the conversation will be like, they will know who the racist is in the conversation. And that is going to be very
Yeah.
important.
And equity, you know, for lower income people,
Mhm.
inclusion. So I think those words we should try to use the 3 words and not the initials.
Absolutely.
Excellent. I'm just going to ask each of you if you've got, I know SB1 is one of Rachel's big ones, but maybe if each of you could identify 2 other bills that you really focused on and hope that we will focus on in the near future. I know I've got a couple in mind, but there are so many, and some of them are really awful and some of them are really good. So maybe one really good one and one really bad one. Janine, do you have one?
Sure. One bad bill that I've been working with Pierre on is a bill regarding a ranked choice voting. And that bill is it's got bipartisan support with Representative Demora from who is a Democrat who is supporting this legislation. And what it would do is outlaw ranked choice voting. And ranked choice voting, when we were unable to get gerrymandering through, another option is to create this way of voting, which allows for a broader range of candidates, not that necessarily the traditional 2-party candidates, although there will always be Republicans and Democrats, but it opens the door for more people who are not part of the party process to participate and run. And candidates would be ranked from 1 to 4. You'd have a primary and a general election, and then the general election, the candidates would be ranked from, let's say, if you have 4, 1 to 4. And what ends up happening is that process usually eliminates the extremists. It protects legislators against being primaried because they vote their conscience on something. And it gets us to a more centralized, more center kind of legislature where things can get done and both sides of the aisle can talk. So right now there is a bill that is pending in the legislative general government committee. Pierre and I and Michelle Kozar, who's on the Grandview City Council, we're trying to get meetings with Bill Demora and also maybe with others to talk about why this bill shouldn't go anywhere, because it's not helping Democrats at all where we are right now. So that's one bill to be watching. They just had yesterday sponsored testimony. Pierre may want to jump in for a second and say something because he had a conversation with one of the sponsors, Demora, about his views on it. Pierre, if you want to jump, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you want to say a few words, I know you're not shy.
Well, in our meeting at City Council last Monday night, Senator Demora was present, so I had the opportunity to ask him, why are you sponsoring this bill? And he said, I'm an old school politician. I'm a Democrat from Chicago. I believe in a 2-party system, and this is a bad bill. And, so with that, information, we're trying to, pull all the information possible to see where else has this bill or this RCV been put in effect, which quite a few cities in America, states in America, Alaska, Maine, Portland, et cetera, including countries such as New Zealand, Australia, have RCV, and it's working out really well. So it's a more democratic way of having people. Hopefully, it brings to the table people who are more centrist, because I think most Americans are more in the center than far left and far right. It's just a terrible bill. And really, the bottom line is it's taking away our rights as Ohioans to have fair representation, you know. So I don't really understand this, old world thinking. I get it, if coming from Chicago, we're talking about the Daley's legacy. Yeah, power, and coercion, that's fine. But I'm not really sure that, it's good for Ohio. So that's where my point of view is. And we're going to have to go and try to help change. I don't think we're going to change his mind, but I think we're going to have to kill this bill. It's just not American. That's simple as that.
Thank you,
But that's
Pierre.
my
And
feedback.
if I could just add, somebody in the chat asked what the bill number was again.
Oh,
It's
good.
Senate Bill 63. So for those who want to know about it, and I just put in a call to find out when opponent hearings will be. So I'll forward that information on to Debbie when I get that.
Well, I will be checking today and tomorrow to see what the committee meetings that are scheduled for next week are. And one of the things that you need to look for when I send you the weekly list is it's got a bunch of attachments. And I know they're very long and all that, but just focus on whatever you are interested in. There's one that's devoted to the State House. That bill is in it. And if there is a hearing, there will be information will be bolded. I've got a section that's called committee meetings.
Yeah.
And it tells you,
Uh,
hang on a minute. Okay, it tells you what the committees are, where they're meeting, what time, and then it says the agenda items. And then I've got it kind of figured out so that it's bolded. Then you can jump down to that particular bill number. If it's bolded, it's one that we're watching. And 63, Senate Bill 63 is one of them for sure. I've been highlighting it sometimes in the big email that goes out, but I can't obviously highlight all the major bills that there are because there's so many of them. But that's a biggie, and you can find that information. So just look for it whenever you get your next email from me that's got the big list. If you are not on my list to get that email, go ahead and put your name and your email address in the chat and say, I want the Thursday Action Group list. And then you can see that document. It's not fancy, it's not pretty, but it will give you all the information you need. And it also has a bunch of tips from Rachel in the beginning of it, of where to find things, how to look for things, all that. So it's pretty much a one-stop shop for that. Thank you so much, Janine. I was going to say, have you brought up the home rule issue on that one, SB 63?
No, we haven't. And yes, that is an important issue as to whether or not municipalities should be allowed to do it anyway. But my experience has been that the legislature talks about home rule when it's to their advantage and they ignore it when it's to their advantage. So I no longer see it as a very strong argument, even though that's something that could be taken up to the Supreme Court. I do have a second bill, but I want to give Rachel a chance to go ahead with one of her bills. And then if there's time, I can talk about a second bill.
Great. Well, awesome. Rachel, you're on.
Yes, so I shared a link in the chat to our new bill tracker for this year. The website is ohiobills.wtf, so very memorable.
Great.
And I've been updating it regularly, and the goal is to give people like simple calls to action around, there's millions of bills, but we try to pick a couple of them. So the good bill that I would highlight is actually a bipartisan bill that would provide no-cost breakfast and lunch to all students in the state. So this is a bipartisan bill that they are trying to get inserted into the state budget. So would really love for folks to make some calls to ask that be inserted into the budget, highlight the fact that there's Republicans on it. I think we have a shot at it this year. Highlight, obviously, that kids do better when they have eaten, basic things to talk about the economy wherever you can. And then the one that I will talk about, should I not talk about SB1?
Well, I just think, we mostly know about that, but go ahead if that's the one that's on your mind.
No, I'll talk about, so Senate Bill 56 is also causing a big stir right now. So this is a bill that just passed the Senate this week. This bill would basically gut what Ohioans voted for last year with issue 2 to legalize adult use marijuana and just radically alter the bill that Ohioans voted for. It was really demeaning this week to watch the legislators in the Senate talk about how Ohioans clearly didn't know what they were voting for and the legislators have to fix it for them. It was very disappointing, but it also is infuriating because even if you're not a fan of adult use marijuana, it just shows a lack of respect for the voters. And so we really have to fight, I think, that one, even just in terms of fighting for the right of our vote to matter. And so that one is now moving over into the House. And I'm expecting a lot of pushback against it and hoping we can get folks to come and testify and make calls. And so we'll be doing a lot of activism around that one.
Great. When I made a call recently, the point I made to begin with was I'm not a marijuana user. I've never been a marijuana user, and I don't intend to be. However,
Yeah.
this is not respectful of the voters. So it might not have been my choice, but so that's a kind of a lead that they can hardly argue with. Well, they can, but
Mhm.
who else has a question before we go on? Okay, any hands up? I'm not going to, let's see, let me go to the second bunch. Anybody over here?
One person asked if it's serious, the threats to state funding for public libraries. That is absolutely a serious fear this year. They have been doing a lot of messaging around like woke ideologies in the libraries and porn in the libraries, and your children are getting dangerous material at the public libraries from these woke ideology. Yeah. That is a real fear because that messaging means that they are thinking of then cutting the libraries, hoping that they will be less supported by the public at that time. So what we're looking at is we're going to push for library funding, full library funding in the budget. And then if they start to make those cuts at any point in the budget process over the next few months, we will fight back against that. It is absolutely something we have to watch. Those are very real fears.
There's a public education part of this that for fair school funding it's really on the hot seat right now. So that information will be in this week again. If you can just pick, if everybody can just pick a few things to call about, what I've Colleen Crook is on this call, and I thank her very much. She's been helping me put together some sample scripts on the bills that are highlighted in your weekly email that comes to you. So we went back and forth because I understand and that it's sometimes intimidating to make a call if you don't have a script. And that 5 calls that we've been using has been so nice and convenient that we've got kind of used to doing that. The only downside of following a script, I will say, is that if you don't tailor it at all, they might just ignore you, or the legislator or aide might just ignore you and say, oh, well, that's just a canned thing. Everybody's using it. So if you do use a script, I think they like to hear your personal story or your personal connection. Even if you just say, like, if it's an education thing, say, I'm a former educator, or my daughter or son are educators or whatever, so that you have that personal connection. At least that's what I've found is more helpful to get your foot in the door and not have them dismiss you as a canned speech. But anyway, Colleen has been helping with that. So once you get your weekly list, you'll see several bills highlighted, and they will have sample scripts. I can't say that they will be perfect scripts, but you can fix them. So, okay, we have any other questions or comments? Okay. Any other bills that either Janine or Rachel want to highlight that we should be looking at? Or,
I have one.
yeah, Janine.
So this is a bit wonky. It's an energy bill. There are 2 pieces in that energy bill. It's House Bill 15, Senate Bill 2 that are of value. The first part of the bill, one of the factors in that bill is, and this is an issue that has been going on for over 50 years, when the Consumers Council or another consumer group, but usually the Consumers Council, appeals a case to the Ohio Supreme Court, arguing that the Public Utilities Commission of Ohio unjustly increased the rates for utilities on a certain issue. and we win the case at the Supreme Court, the utility is then required to cease and desist from charging for that component of the rate increase on a going forward basis, but they're never required to refund the money back. And this has amounted to over $1.5 billion over the course of since about 2009. So it is a huge amount of money. In fact, in one of the cases that my office appealed, it was $800 million that was found to be an error that was given to money the PUCO granted to AEP, and they did not have to refund back what they had collected. Understand that the appeal process takes a couple of years, so they've got a couple of years of really taking money from customers that they're not entitled to. So there is a provision in this bill, and we have tried for years and years and years, and I came that close when I was Consumers Counsel, getting it into Senate Bill 221, a provision that would require the refunds, and then the utilities, gave a lot of money to the legislators, and it didn't happen. That's my take on it. They may have a different take, but that's my take. So this is up again, and from what I'm hearing is it's actually got a good shot at being passed. The other thing in the bill is many of you may be familiar with House Bill 6 and how we're all paying for uneconomic coal plants, one of which is in Indiana, and they're spewing tons of horrible emissions. There is a bill to finally repeal that is also included in this legislation, to finally repeal that cost. The reason why it didn't move in earlier sessions is because one of those plants was located in the Speaker Stevens's district. So he put the kibosh on any attempt to get rid of that, but he's no longer Speaker. And the new Speaker says, I don't care. So looks like it might move forward. So if you're looking for some way to instead of just say no, to say yes, take a look at those two provisions in House Bill 15 and Senate Bill 2. I'm still gathering more information about them. And in fact, we'll be meeting with some folks tonight to get some more information, and we'll be sending stuff to Debbie on that sometime in the next few days to alert you all about that.
Awesome.
But this would be money back in customers' pockets. So
Janine, what was the first bill that you mentioned that has a House and Senate version?
it's House. Oh, the first. You're talking about this energy bill or the ranked choice voting?
Energy, yeah.
Okay, so it's House Bill 15 and Senate Bill 2.
Thank you.
And they're not entirely identical.
Okay.
From what I understand. And I still have to spend a little bit more time reading through the rest of the provisions. I understand that Consumers Counsel is being neutral on the rest of the bill.
Would you say House Bill 15 is more inclusive than Senate Bill 2?
I think they both have those provisions, but there are other areas which deal with competition and other matters that might be slightly different between the two bills. So if you provide something, I would say we're here to support these two pieces as opposed to the whole legislation. And just say, make sure those don't get, X'd out by the utility lobbyists.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's great.
Would you be willing, Janine, if we highlight that bill, assuming they have a meeting coming up on it, to help Colleen and I with a little sample script?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, anybody else have a question or a comment? And anybody, either Rachel or Janine, have another bill you want to put out? Or maybe a comment about just in general, the climate and how you see things changing in our political landscape, not only on the state level, but the national.
Oh, that's another 5 hours.
Yeah, that's a whole other call.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, I've been getting a lot of questions about people saying, "Oh, we love 5 calls and we're doing that." And by the way, we do have a form now that I think most of you know about it. We started it on the 23rd of January, and it is to log our calls or our contacts with our legislators. And it can be national and state or any local. It can be local. So it's open so that it's encouraging ourselves and each other to go ahead and make those contacts, even if it's a little uncomfortable. We found that some people who really, really don't want to talk to somebody in person, they're not quite comfortable with that yet. They've been doing it at night, but they've been leaving a voicemail. As long as they leave their full address, their name and full address, then it can be tallied. So that is effective, and it can be included on that log. But if you don't know where the log is or need it, shoot me an email. I'll send it to you. There's a form. I try to put it up on the Indivisible Facebook page pretty regularly, and it is at the top in featured items or whatever it is. You can scroll through and find it and put your information there. To date, I believe as of today, we had 1,260 some calls made since the 23rd of January. That's just the ones that were logged. And I'm betting that it's a lot more than we used to make. So I think the process is working. And for those who might be kind of skittish about putting their information in there, it's only asking for your name. You can make up a name if you prefer, or just put in anonymous. We don't really care. It's just putting that line in there. And even though your email address is at the top, those are not saved. So nothing of your personal information is going to be spread around at all. So you don't need to worry about that aspect. Any other questions or concerns? Okay, well, I want to thank all of you for joining us. It's been wonderful. And I know for the new members who've just been with us a short time, we have a lot of stuff going on. But try not to get overwhelmed, because what you're going to need to do is pick and choose what really speaks to you, and then get involved in that level. And you might have to put your toes in a little slowly at first until you feel comfortable. That's perfectly fine. Most of us have done exactly the same thing, and we're here to support each other. If you've got a question, and if you really feels like it sounds dumb, that's fine. I mean, we've all, I know I've asked many, many, many dumb questions, but it's helpful, because if we're not too proud to ask dumb questions, then we get answers, and then we can move on, and then we can help other people that might be afraid to ask those dumb questions. So I'm not afraid to ask dumb questions, because I've been accused of being kind of a little ditzy in my past, so it's fine. Anyway, I appreciate all of you, and I hope that you will stay in touch. And especially so many thanks to Janine and to Rachel for providing their expertise. They're just a wealth of information, and we're just so lucky to have them with us. Thank you so much. Anybody else have any lingering questions afterwards? Go ahead and shoot me an email, and I will try to forward it to Rachel and Janine. And if you don't mind answering questions, if I can file them after the fact, would that be
Sure.
okay with you? Okay.
Sure.
Wonderful.
Yep.
Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
absolutely.
We will meet again in 2 weeks. For those of you who haven't been with us before, we do not meet every week. We meet every other week. We used to meet every week, but sometimes it's a bit much to try to keep up with, and there's a lot to be done. So by the time we do our every other week, we've got a lot to report on. The next one is going to be informal. So if you want to join us then, we will basically share what we've been doing. And we never run out of things to talk about. There's lots of stuff going on, but it's great to have this support network. And with all the things going on, I don't think there could be anything more important than that, to stay in community and to stay in touch. So thank you all, and have a good day. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Debbie, I'll send you this in just a moment, the
Thank
chat.
you. Yeah, let me stop the recording here. Hang on a minute. Okay, stop recording. All right. And then I will be sending it to Mia, and then she'll send it on to Sarah. I didn't realize it would be so easily, but it's apparently it is. So we were doing it a complicated way, and I didn't know that. So now we know. Thank you very much for sending me the chat.
Okay, and I'll see you in a little bit then.
Okay, sounds great.
Thanks. Great job.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
You too. Thanks.